Mode.
Hi everybody, Mike White here. How are you? Welcome to the monthly call. We've got a lot to do today and we're looking forward to a great thing. I just wanted to give you all a heads up before we got started with the presentation. For those of you who are following the blog posts that are on the websites, or either through the Twitter account or through the Facebook page, or however you see them, you can always go to the Improve My Tomorrow coaching site, www.improvemytomorrowcoaching.com, and look for the blog post. But Thursday's blog post is going to have a piece about the recent events with Wells Fargo getting out of wholesale and what that's going to mean to us. So I just wanted to share that with you guys and make sure that you got out there and made sure that you're following the blog post, because sometimes it's we only get to speak once a month. So for those of you who are following the blog, you'll see that, and they get published on Thursdays. And for those of you who haven't, you should either subscribe to the Twitter account, friend us on Facebook, or just check in at the Improve My Tomorrow coaching site when you get the chance to stay on top of the blogs, because I try to put something out there every Thursday that's relevant and important. As always, I try to get to you guys first. Unfortunately, we only meet once a month, and so when things happen in advance of us getting together, I just want to make sure that we're in a spot where we can help. So let's get started. Today's, or this month's call, we've got to talk a lot about follow-up and follow-through. And, I speak to a lot of loan officers, and I speak to a lot of people who are highly successful and some who are not as successful as others. And some of the things that become very apparent is the little differences. It's not the big things that I found that separates really productive people from ones who are not quite as productive. It's the little things. And one of the things clearly that stands out, the huge differences between those who do monumentally well and the ones that are not quite there, are their ability to follow up and follow through. So today's call, we're going to deal with that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to engage in this conversation because I think it's critically important. Three major factors that people have that they're worried about when it comes to loan originators. And these change in order of importance, but the three of these are the ones that show up every time you ask. And you can scramble them up and dump them out, and it's 90 to 95% of the people will respond with these three things. They worry that loan originators lie, or that they don't know what they're talking about, or they won't tell them 100% of the truth. They also are upset the fact that loan officers don't call people back. They don't call back when they say they're going to call back. They don't call when they're supposed to. Things don't get done as they've asked them to get done. So the second part about this is they don't call back. And the third is clearly they're afraid of getting ripped off. And all the things that you have seen and all the things that we have been through over the last few years. When I first got started in the mortgage business, disclosures were a couple of pages and and a handwritten good faith estimate with some calculations, and we were good to go. And now we've got, depending on where you are and how your system works, about 35 to 50 pages of disclosures, which doesn't help the consumer a bit in my expectations, because A, most of the time they don't read it, and B, people will sign just about anything when it comes to them wanting to get their money. So at the end of the day, the important thing here is that we get really clear on what it is that we're doing, and we understand where the apprehension is from our consumer. And our consumer really wants these three things settled in their mind when they're going to do business. And so have these understanding here, and we've talked about 100% of the truth 100% of the time. We've talked about having a protocol written down on how we do follow up with people, and we know that anybody who's on this call who knows me and I know you, none of us are working for companies that take advantage of people or rip them off. So that goes without saying. So the other ones that we can control is the process by which we communicate. and that is our follow-up and our follow-through. As loan professionals, we need to do better. We really need to set a new standard. Those of us who are left, and this becomes an overwhelming conversation, is depending on whose numbers you want to use, there were between 3 and 450,000 loan originators in this country as little as a few years ago. And now, depending on whose numbers you want, there's less than 115,000 licensed loan professionals, and God knows how many are working for, institutions. So even if we had 150,000, more than half to 2/3 of the people that were making their living in the mortgage business as the origination side of the business, they're all gone. And so we need to elevate what we're doing here, and we need to come up with the fact that we cannot be in a position where we're not telling 100% of the truth 100% of the time. And we can't operate unless we have a written and clear, concise follow-up procedure. What's our protocol for following up with people, the entire process? And many of you know we have talked about this, and if you haven't ever done this, I need you to really sit down this week and write this out. What are your steps from the time that a client calls you to the time that they close the loan and beyond? Do you have a written set of protocols, a written set of procedures on how it is that you make those follow-up communications happen so that that customer feels like you've been connected to them and have lived up to your end of the deal? And by the way, you should have all the numbers. You should know. Everything should be quite clear. The numbers should be correct from day one. You should know exactly what it is that you're going to do, how it is all going to work, from the time that you speak to those people to you finally get that application into processing. From then, you should have a processing schedule that tells you the communications schedule from the appraisal through certain different milestones going into underwriting and coming out possibly with conditions and clearing those conditions and meeting your commitment date and getting those closings scheduled. All those things you should be able to have on a flow chart and be able to move them clearly, because we all know, especially today, there is some stress on the processing side of the equation. There are certainly some turnaround time issues. I've seen some markets where appraisals are taking 3 weeks. And so we've got to adjust for that. We've got to understand that. But how valuable do you think that becomes when we have those conversations in advance with our clients? We set that expectation, and then we follow up with them and communicate with them through the entire process. And this is not just from when they become into application. It is early in the process. When you first speak to that client, what is your follow-up? When somebody comes to you and you're following up with them, what is the pattern by which you follow up? Do you know when they come in, where they came from, who the referral partner was, how they came to call you? And if so, are you communicating, if it was a referral partner, with that referral partner to let them know, A, have you contacted that particular person, and have you not, and can they engage in helping you? So these are all really important things, is what your setup and your specific follow-up procedure is going to be. Because the only way that you can have your numbers correct from day one is if you know what the milestones are that you're trying to target. So keep this in mind as we're moving forward, because this becomes a very powerful, professional way to manage your business. So what we need to do here is we need to answer a few questions so that we can really drill down on this and make sure that we have a proven strategy that's going to work every time with every client, because we can't have a different system for different people. It's way too stressful. You know, there are significant differences in the amount of systems people use, and the loan officers who do more production have less systems because they can't possibly have more systems. There's too many files. So they tend to have much more specific, direct, and complete processes for what it is that they're doing, where some loan officers who are closing 1, 2, or 3 loans a month can kind of fly by the seat of their pants because it can take a long time. They have a long time. They're not doing any other business, so they can spend all month trying to get 1 or 2 loans closed. Well, if somebody's closing 10 or 15, they don't have that much time. They've got to have one system. So here are 6 points that I absolutely want to drive home with you and make sure that we're answering, because if we're not going to look at this honestly and put these things in place, then we have to admit that we're not really lining this thing up to get the best possible result. So step 1, do I have a written follow-up program that I share with each client? Is it in writing? Do I show people how I do my business? Do I show them, when you call, this is what happens. This is how we return. You're going to get this message. Many of you know I'm a proponent of not answering the phones, so that when your client calls in, they're going to get a voicemail recording that tells them specifically what time that particular day you're going to be returning phone calls. And so they can pick their time slot, and you'll call them back on time, and they'll be ready, and we avoid voicemail and phone tag and all that other happy nonsense. So do I have a written follow-up program? People will respect you if you just share with them and create the expectation up front by which you follow through. The second one, do I schedule each event and make every contact on time? Just like I have to sit here with my coaching clients and these phone calls, everything is on a schedule. I've got a number of different clients who are in private coaching. I have a number of different group coaching programs. I have a number of different obligations when it comes to training and speaking and traveling. All has to be on a schedule. If it's not scheduled, you can't possibly get all this done. There's too many gaps, and that's what kills your time. So when you sit there and you explain to people, again, here's the schedule by which we call, we're going to speak. Now, a normal process, the people submit application, and you can explain to them the application is going to go into processing. There may be a request for additional conditions within the first 72 hours. And I will follow up with you in 72 hours. We will schedule the appraisal. We will schedule certain things to happen. And then we will collect any other additional documentation from you. And the file will be submitted into underwriting at this point. When the appraisal comes back on day, and again, in your market, it could be 7 days, could be 10 days, 12 days, 21 days, whatever it is. If you know what that turnaround time is, you can advise the client about when those things are going to happen, when they're going to be done, and how you're going to follow up specifically. Because nothing's worse in this entire world than a client calling you every day looking for information. If you tell them and you give them the cycle or the schedule of events and how the loan's going to flow, and again, under promise and over deliver can't be stressed enough here, so that you're always calling them early or on time, accurately with the information. It takes them out of the equation, and it saves you from having to return those phone calls. Number 3, do I set reasonable expectations for this specific transaction? If you take a deal, and I had one of these the other day in a marketplace where we're dealing with 10 to 12 day appraisal turnarounds, and we're dealing with 8 days turnaround in underwriting for this particular organization, and they get a deal in there, and there's a 21-day closing set up, and they got a contract, and oh, by the way, it's 21 days to closing, and they signed the contract on a Friday, and the loan officer got the thing 4 days later. So we're already down to 17 days on this file before we even touch it, and the client doesn't even have all the documentation in. And so here we are. We've got this loan officer scrambling, trying to close this loan, and neither the realtors nor the customer involved are as committed to the outcome as my mortgage person is. And who do you think they're going to blame when this thing doesn't go on time? And the answer is going to be the loan officer is going to be the one that's going to be dealing with this. So reasonable expectations are, You have to lay out the timeline that if everything goes perfect, this is what can happen. And if it doesn't go perfectly, here are reasonable expectations for what the delays could be. Because I just had one case where I had a loan officer turn the deal and send it back to the realtors because they had too short of a window, and he said, there's no way that we can close this loan in this amount of time. There's not enough time in this marketplace to close this loan. And they said, well, we'll just deal with getting an extension when the time comes. And they said, no, let's start out not having to look for an extension and putting the pressure on the situation. Let's start out with a reasonable expectation about this particular transaction and when it's going to close, because that's what's right. The other part is am I including the other professionals in the process? When you lay out the schedule and the timeline for your client, you should do the same for any other professionals involved in the transaction, whether it be the listing agent on a purchase deal or the selling agent, the buying agent on the purchase deal. Those are great things for you to do because, first of all, they appreciate the communication without having to find you and ask you questions. So you communicating in a proactive way with them helps you. So the big deal becomes with this is, am I engaging the other professionals? And that's just not realtors. It could be the attorneys. It could be the insurance people. One of the big things that I'm seeing now more and more is the fact that, when we get these appraisals back and when people are going out for shopping, especially on deals that may be tight, how nice would it be when you get the appraisal back to contact the insurance professional with your declarations page, what you're going to need from them, and a budget. If you calculated $40 or $50 a month for homeowners insurance and your client calls the insurance agent and gets a Cadillac policy for $250 a month because they want a $5 million balloon policy, your deal's dead. So setting that expectation for the insurance person, not only does it help you keep that and your ratios all working, but your insurance professional is going to be thrilled that their client isn't showing up, at 9 o'clock in the morning for an 11 o'clock closing needing an insurance policy. So that's a big deal. The other part now is number 5 is the client 100% clear as to what their obligations are toward this transaction? And is it in writing? Do you have something in writing that tells them something simple like, don't borrow any money, don't apply for any new credit, do not make any cash deposits in any of your bank accounts for more than $500, do not quit your job, do not co-sign loans, don't do any of these things, don't even think about doing any of these things, because doing any of those things can cost you this transaction and possibly your earnest money deposit and maybe other financial penalties. Does your client know in writing that when you call them looking for a pay stub or a bank statement or a W-2 or some sort of letter or documentation, do they know that the file is on hold and nothing happens until they get it back? Do you give them a time frame? I need that document by Friday at 2 o'clock, Monday at 9 a.m. Because without getting that by that time, it may delay the closing and it may cost you. It's very simple. If the client knows that there are penalties to inaction, they will take the action that they need. If you don't explain to them that they can be damaged by not doing the work, they may not do the work. And speaking of work, do you guarantee your work? Here's an interesting proposition, and I've been speaking to people about this quite a bit lately. Do I guarantee my work? I've got loan officers out there who certify their approvals. They certify their customers with a guarantee that says if they certify these people as to being able to buy a house, if they've approved them for the terms and conditions of a loan, and for whatever reason they're not able to close that loan and it's the bank's responsibility or the lender's responsibility, everybody else did what they were supposed to do, the appraisal came in fine, the customer did everything they were supposed to do, all the documentation, and if the reason that this loan either didn't happen or they weren't able to reach the numbers that they said they were, that loan officer in that company would be responsible. I've got others that guarantee their timing. In other words, if we say we're going to close on the 30th of the month, that they close on the 30th of the month. I've got one who has a guarantee that says they will close on time. And if they do not close on the guaranteed date, that they will pay any additional moving expenses, they will pay for a hotel room for the people, they will pay in any per diem charges, and they guarantee it up to $5,000 worth of additional expenses. This is no fake give you nothing deal. This is a real deal. Oh, and by the way, they also guarantee if the loan doesn't close due to a fault of the mortgage company and they lose the earnest money deposit, that's included as well. Again, they put their money on the line and they're guaranteeing their deal that says if we say this is a deal, it's a deal. And my question to you is, why can't we all act in that regard? I'm not saying your company will allow you to do that. But my point is, as individual professionals, if we're crystal clear on what it is that we say and what it is that we do, why isn't we couldn't all guarantee our work? We know what the deal looks like going in. We should be aware of what the circumstances are and whether or not they can happen. Do outside circumstances or unimaginable things sometimes happen in the deal? Absolutely they do. Absolutely they do. And you can't prepare for the unknown until it happens. And then it becomes a learned lesson, and we can prepare for it in the future. But at the end of the day, there are many known things about a loan transaction. So these 6 things here, having a written follow-up program that you share with the client, scheduling each event and make contact on time. If you say you're going to call somebody at 1 o'clock, call them at 1 o'clock. Any of you who know me know that we have appointments and we have schedules. When it's the time for us to connect, we're connecting. Very rarely am I not right there when the phone rings, and some of the greatest compliments I get is by my clients telling me they could set their watch on the time that their phone rings. Connecting with the other professionals in this process is only one of the best marketing things that you can do to have new professionals find you. The number one way of finding new referral partners is working with them on a new deal. If they're involved on the other side of a transaction from you, nothing's stronger because they get to see you in action. You get to share with them your entire system. After the loan closes, about a week or so after it's done, follow up with a card or a letter or a phone call and talk to them. Probably just about the same time they're depositing their commission check would be a great thing. Being clear with that, as especially with what everybody's obligations are, and having this stuff in writing and guaranteeing your work, I need you all thinking about what is it we do, how do we do it, and how do we make sure that we're acting in a responsible way and that everything that we're happening is happening as it's supposed to. Now, each stage of the process requires a plan. And again, we're back to that scary word, schedule. Schedule of actions that ensure what is supposed to be done actually gets done. Every one of you has heard these topics before. I don't know how committed we are to what the actual written plan is that makes these things happen. The suspect to prospect conversion. What happens and when? How does that change my follow-up? Prospect to application. Again, what is it that happens? How do I collect? What's the timing behind that? Application to pre-approval. Now, again, application could be eliminate the pre-approval because some people may already have a deal when you get there, so understand it could be application to formal loan submission. Could bypass the pre-approval stage. So I have this in here just for those of you who are getting people early in the process who don't have properties yet, who are starting the looking cycle. What is the follow-up plan? What is the process? What are the actions that I take ongoing? If I have pre-approvals out there looking for property to buy, how frequently am I contacting them? Again, I suggest that if we've got pre-approvals that are out there looking for property, that we are out there, once a week in front of them, asking them, have you seen property last week? Are you scheduled to see property this week? So that becomes important. And certainly from submission to closing, we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about the file process. We talked about backing out the numbers. If we're supposed to close on the 30th, we should have a clear to close on the 23rd. If we need a commitment date on the 21st, then we need to be checking on that commitment on the 16th. We need to have a timeline, because what's supposed to get done should actually get done in the time frame. And remember, we've got to be very clear about under-promising and over-delivering. If you say something's going to be done on Friday and it gets done on Thursday, the customer's never going to be upset. So make sure that we are clear, crystal clear, on what the steps look like. Now, please follow this, because this is one of the deals that is the holdback for some people. The average loan officer closes less than 3 loans a month, and here's a very specific reason, is because they don't develop the systems to do any more than that, because they don't have time. And nothing is more important than you understanding that you can't remember everything. If you're planning on doing more than 3 or 4 loans a month, you need to have a written protocol on how these transitions and the timing behind each action and the scheduled activity. If you don't create the framework and the structure by how you know exactly what's going to happen and when, and constantly are scheduling the next thing to do, as opposed to trying to remember every day when you get up in the morning, hey, what was I supposed to do today? Then you're going to be, you're just going to be driving yourself nuts. When I first got started in the mortgage business, the guy who was the quote-unquote top producer in the office at the time, and he was closing a little over like $1 million, $1.5 million a month in business, and he was the big top producer in the office that I got hired to. Can you imagine that? And everybody around there just thought this guy was the greatest thing in the world. And he'd come in every morning at 8:30, and he'd get a big old cup of coffee, and he'd sit down at his desk, and he'd pull out a legal pad, and he'd just start writing the names of all the loans that he had in progress, and then all the people that he spoke to, and all the people he could think of, and he'd sit there for a couple hours doing this amazing brain dump on this legal pad, and then he'd go through the list of whether or not should he talk to them today, should he call them, whatever, and it would take 2-3 hours for him to go through this process. And I looked at that and said that was like the most ridiculous thing that I've ever seen. And so what I decided to do was, if I had something going on, I knew, because I don't have a great memory for some things, that it was best for me to just schedule the next event. So if I sat there and I spoke to a client and I said, okay, Mrs. Smith, I'll put these deals together for you, and I'll speak to you tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and I'll explain to you how you can finance that home. Well, I'd schedule the appointment to speak to her at 4 o'clock, but I had better schedule the time to put together the information. So if I don't write into my schedule 2 o'clock, put together the Smith file, so I can call her at 4, it's never going to get done on time, and then I'll be late. So the point is you need to have a written protocol as to what steps you're going to take and what the timing is. Because that's the other part. Loan officers are traditionally very bad at math. They're very bad with their numbers. Well, it takes me an hour to put together an application and submit it, and I've sat down with loan officers who told me that, and then sat at their desk and watched them do it, and watched it take an hour and a half. Well, an hour and a half isn't an hour. And if you're working on 2 loans a day, very quickly you get into a hole that you'll never recover from, because that's an awful amount of time to be losing. And the problem is if it does take an hour and a half, then let's just be aware of it. Because the frustration when you think you've got 2 or 3 things to do and it's only supposed to take you a few hours and it takes all day, you go home with this pain. It's like, I don't know what happened to the day. I only got these 2 things done or these 3 things done, and the whole day disappeared. Well, you can't have that happen. If what you're working on is a full day's work, then what you're working on is a full day's work. But if you're working on something and it's only supposed to take you an hour and it takes you longer than that and you don't realize it, your brain doesn't make that adjustment. So it thinks if I'm working from 9 to 10 on this deal, I should be done with this file at 10. It takes an hour and a half. It's 10:30. I lost a half hour. That's not a good way to start the day. So be clear. Be honest with yourself how long things take. I would rather you over-allot time and then have extra time than under-allot time and be pressured to get things done. Under pressure, mistakes get made. So example, just like we discussed about how we close a transaction within 30 days. Remember the calendar? We back the numbers out. We need the same dedication for the follow-up from the initial call to the formal loan submission. So here are the questions. And again, I want to ask you questions. You can answer these, and they will help you build your model. So the question is what happens when somebody calls me? What happens? What is the? Do they get a voicemail? Do they get an assistant? Do they get a receptionist? Do they get me live? Do I answer the phone? What happens? Based on what happens next becomes the next question. So then the other question is, what are the questions when I do? If I'm speaking to them, number 2 could be part of number 1. In other words, if they call you and you're the one answering the phone, you'd roll right into number 2. If they called you and they're leaving a voicemail, there needs to be what are the steps in the number 1 protocol so that you engage in reaching that client so that you can start asking the questions in number 2. There may be no difference in the steps between 1 and 2. The customer may call, you may answer, go right into number 2. You may not answer, and you may spend 2 or 3 or 4 attempts to actually speak to that client. But you need to have how frequently. We talked about that. I call it the 3x3 system, 3 times in 3 days, once a week for 3 weeks, once a month for 3 months. If I don't hear back from the client, I can get rid of them. Whatever your protocol is to return phone calls and get in front of people, you should have it written down and people should know what it is. Because number 3 is an answer. What is my procedure if I don't speak with people? If people have called me and I have not spoke to them, what is my follow-up protocol? What did they say in their message? I have some loan officers who record in their greeting. They tell them exactly when they're going to call back. They tell exactly what the times are so that they know to avoid playing phone tag. And they also ask the question, and if you would leave for me the name of the person that referred you to me so I can give them a quick call and thank them for the referral, they'll leave you who called. And then you'll know who that referral partner is, and if you're having trouble getting back in front of that client, you can always call that referral partner and say, hey, I've been trying to reach your client, the Joneses. I haven't been able to touch them. Next time you speak with them, please reiterate that I'm trying to reach them and have them, call me back and, give me some feedback. Number 4 is when I speak to them, what happens next? You can never speak to a client and then assume that they're going to call you back. You've got to have a follow-up protocol that says proactively, if I speak to you today, I'm going to follow up with you tomorrow, or I'm going to follow up with you on Thursday or Friday or Tuesday of next week, whatever it is, and then it's got to be written down into your schedule. So after you speak with the client, you need to know what happens next. This is not one of those guessing games. It needs to be factual, and it needs to be scheduled. How am I going to communicate in the future? Depends on the client. That initial conversation with that client should take you there. Does that client want to talk to you over the phone? Does that client want to come into your office? Does that client want to text, email, talk on Facebook? Whatever. How is their preferred method of communication? What's your preferred method of communication? Have you shared those conversations back and forth? If the client says, I like to text back and forth, and you don't know how to text, we've got a problem. If that client would prefer to communicate via email and you love email, then we're great. If you guys are going to follow up by phone, you better make sure that we have the real contact phone numbers so that you can get through them, or it's being left, the message being left in a place where they can get the message clearly. I once had a situation where I had a loan officer, client was calling them, and the loan officer was calling the client, and the client complained to the referral partner that the loan officer never called them back, and the loan officer's got, like 7 or 8 phone calls to the client trying to reach them, and they can't convince the referral partner that they were doing that. And we found out later that the kids were coming home from school, and they were playing back their messages, seeing if their friends had called, and meanwhile, the parents would get home and there'd be no light flashing, so they'd never know that the loan officer ever called. So the point is that becomes your protocol. If I'm calling a client back and I know who the referral partner is, and I'm not able to reach them, I can always find out, or at least I can call the referral partner and engage them in the conversation. And when it comes to the referral partner, you do need to be engaged. You need to thank them. Some people I know send handwritten cards to thank them for a referral. Sometimes they send an email. Sometimes they'll pick up the phone, and sometimes it's a combination of the three. Never miss an opportunity to thank a referral partner for a referral. Never. Cardinal sin. If somebody's nice enough to refer you, you should be nice enough to thank them. Remember, we talked very early on in our conversations about the words please and thank you. Once the initial contact is complete and the referral partner is communicated with, what happens? Now what's my protocol? Do I have a series of scheduled events that I follow to be certain that I'm communicating effectively with this client and their referral partners? When I get this deal in and I have a contract to sale, am I contacting the realtor referral partners on both sides, talking to them about the appraisal, talking to them about comparables, talking to them about how to put this thing together so it'll go the best possible way? That's what I'm talking about, is having a protocol. So how do I follow up? How do I follow through? Once this thing is in process, where are the milestones by which I'm sharing information? Now, again, you have to be careful because each state has certain requirements about what you're allowed to say or do and to whom. But the point is there are some basic fundamental times in there that you can communicate, especially when you have milestones like the commitment or the clear to close or the wire confirmation, the closing, and the follow-up post-closing to see if you can generate more business. Do I have a series of scheduled events that I follow to be certain I communicate effectively with this particular client and those referral partners that are involved? And again, I know this sounds like a lot of writing down and nailing it down, but let me tell you something. It's ingrained in my system to understand that if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. You all know this. If the plan is not written down, you don't have a plan. And if you don't have it scheduled, it's highly unlikely that you're going to make the effort. And if you're not checking a result, why did you bother with the first two? We know that. And yet very few people go through the process of actually doing this. But for everybody that does do it, to a person, they tell me how rewarding it has been to do this and how much better their business flows because of it. Creating timelines and reoccurring communications on specific days can help as well. If you have somebody that's pre-approved and they're out looking for a loan, they're pre-approved for a loan, they're out looking for a home, you need to be speaking with them. You need to be talking to them once a week. Are you looking for property? And here's the point. If your buyer who's pre-approved is not looking for property, then they can't find a house, which means they don't need your loan, which means you can't get paid. If they are looking for a house and they're working with your referral partner, that'll give you valuable information as to what they're seeing and what their opinion is and what the reasons may be why they haven't found something that they want, how close they are. But more importantly, staying in touch with them on a regular basis and asking them the question if they're seeing property or not. That will tell you who they're seeing. If they're seeing property and they're not seeing property with the agent or the person that referred you, that's a good time having that heads up to go back to that original referral partner and say, look, I don't want to tell you how to do your business, but I was speaking to the Joneses and they've been working with another realtor seeing property. I don't know, if you might want to give them a call or if something happened, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes people fall between the cracks. Not just happen to loan officers, it can happen to realtors as well. And so the point is if you've got their back, how many clients do you have to bring back to your referral partners after they've strayed before you become a valuable resource to that referral partner? So we're going to go through some success strategies here, some stuff that you can actually put in place. I need you to call your pre-approvals every Thursday. Now you can pick a different day. It could be Wednesday, it could be Friday. I like Thursday. To be sure that they're looking for property or scheduled to see property. Because if they're not, you got to find out why. And a simple phone call back to the realtor reminding them that this client is ready to go can help keep that client in your sphere of influence. Remember, if that person referred you in the first place, you know that they're referring you. They're on your team. They're on your side. If they go see a different realtor and you're not their loan officer and they've got their own lender, there's a chance you could lose that deal. Understand that once you lose contact, you lose control. So you should have a predetermined spot in your schedule. And again, I'm suggesting Thursday, where everybody that's pre-approved who's out looking, you're picking up the phone and you're calling them to find out if they're seeing property. If you reach them directly, you can ask the questions and you can act accordingly. If they're not answering the phone and you haven't heard from them, you may want to go 1 or 2 weeks most and then call the referral partner and ask if they've seen them, are they working with them, and ask them what the question is. Because I will tell you, people don't necessarily stick with the person that they started with. If they don't see any differentiation in what's going on, they think everybody's the same. The rate's the rate, so what's the difference? That's what interest rates are. It doesn't matter who this person is. Well, we all know getting a great loan originator is not the same as getting someone who's terrible. Success strategy number 2 is set a specific schedule to follow up with those people that you've talked to. You have to complete the process of delivering the documentation or committed getting the approval. You need to pick a day, either Tuesday or Wednesday, to call your people and move them into the approval process. Maybe some sort of automated incubation process. There's a system that I've been using and I've been very happy with called Path to Buy. We'll talk about that more down the road. In fact, I'm going to schedule a call with the Path to Buy people that you guys will be included on. It won't be our regularly scheduled call. It'll be a general call so that we can invite a whole realm of people. But if you haven't gone to pathtobuy.com or gone to www.pathtobuy.demo.com and seen what something like Path to Buy can do for you, you're going to be missing something. And if you go to pathtobuy.com and you like what you see, then email me privately and I will get you a special deal on that so you don't have to pay bust out retail to get it. But what I'm saying is pick a day. If we're calling our pre-approvals on Thursday, then it's Tuesday or Wednesday that we're going to call people who are not pre-approved yet but are on our radar, trying to get them to move forward into that process. And you can make a determination once you've seen that either they are ready to be pre-approved or they need to be incubated, in which case you need to have a process, whether it be Path to Buy or your own brand of follow-up, whatever it is. What's the plan? Because again, without a plan and without a schedule, it's not going to happen. Success strategy number 3, be sure to contact the sellers on all your purchase contracts and apply for the job of being their next loan officer. This is the most missed thing that I've ever seen in my life. I don't understand why this doesn't happen. But you've got a purchase contract, you've got a seller on the other side. Why aren't you, reaching out to them and applying for the job of being their next LO? Most of the time when the seller has finally agreed to sell their house, they haven't made formal application for the new loan on their future home yet. In fact, some of them haven't even begun the shopping process because they weren't going to shop and get emotionally attached to buying a new home until they knew that they were going to sell theirs and what they were going to see from it. So the point is regardless of where they are in the process, why not ask for the opportunity to assist them? You can help them get the new loan. If they've already spoke to somebody, you can give them your own proposal. You can verify the other guy's numbers. You can be some sort of a resource to these people in some way, shape, or form. But these people are likely going somewhere where you can lend them money. Why wouldn't you do that? Because if you're not asking for the opportunity, you're not taking advantage. How many of those a year? If you're doing 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 purchase opportunities a year, and you contacted every one of those sellers, how many deals do you think you could find? 5? 10? What's your average commission rate? That's a 10 to 20% improvement in your overall business just for making a phone call. One phone call a week, you could improve your business 10 or 20%. You'd have to be nuts not to do it. And the other part of the motivating factor, when they ask you, well, why are you calling me? Well, first of all, I do loans for a living, and it appears that you're going to need one because most of the people that are selling a house are going to go buy another house, and for the most part, it's going to be an area where I can lend money. So I'd like to apply for the job of being your next loan officer. The other reason I'm contacting you is if you've already got somebody in place, that's great. I want to be a resource to you. I want to be of help to you. If you have any confusion, any challenges with your lender, there's information that they're not giving you or things that you think may not be the way it's supposed to be, you can call me. I'd be happy to review your documentation. Why? Because to be honest with you, if you don't move out, my people can't move in. That's plain and simple. That's my motivation. If you can't complete or get out of your house and go on to your next deal, my people have no shot of getting in. So here's what I'm talking about when it comes to this follow-up and follow-through. And I know there's longer-term follow-up than this, but you're seeing the point. You're seeing where we're going. I'm talking primarily here from the beginning of the transaction into, this part. The big focus is the opportunity that happens from the first 30 to 90 days of the relationship. The next strategy is we can also reach out there and we can find other referral partners. Follow up with the listing agent on your purchase deals after the closing to see about building a new relationship. Remember, if we've built a system where we're reaching out to them when we first get the contract and we're talking about the appraisal, we're talking about them putting together their comparables, we keep them posted according to the rules that we've established based on our own state laws as to what information we're allowed to share. We've gone through, we closed on time, we closed at the price we had agreed to, everybody's happy, we show up at the closing, it was nice to do business with them. You go home that day, you write that agent a note card, or you send them a card. Hey, it was great working with you, really enjoyed it, congratulations on selling the house. I'm going to follow up with you in a short time to see if there's some things that we might be able to do together in the future. Send out that card and call them in a week or so to follow up to see that they got the card. And oh, by the way, it's probably about the same timing for them getting their commission check for having closed your deal. What a happy coincidence. And so after you've had a proven track record and a successful closing together, why not connect with them to see if you can make it happen again? This was a largely positive experience. We got together, we closed the loan, we made some money. Why not? Opportunities come your way every day. And it's up to you to follow up and follow through. I can't emphasize to you enough that the biggest holes is in people who do lower loan production that could be doing much higher loan production is right here in the fact that their follow-up and follow-through is not what it could be. It's not about generating more leads, and my God, people ask me all the time, how do I generate more leads? How do I generate more leads? Well, it's like trying to carry water in a strainer. It's virtually impossible. You're never going to get somewhere. I'd rather have a bucket with a hole in the bottom. At least I could, try to keep my hand over the one hole, but a strainer is never going to work. The point here is opportunity. what are the opportunities that you have once you start this process to conclude the process in a positive and favorable manner with less stress, less time, and more profitability, making more people happy. And that's what I need you to look at. I need you to look at your systems. I need you to look at how you follow through. Is there a plan? Do I have it written down? Do I have a default schedule all written out so that these people fall right into it in a group where I know the exercise of making these phone calls and talking to these people or having these meetings, whatever it may be, is just a fact of life. It is much easier. And you see it, and let's take professional football. Most of the quarterbacks in professional football, the play gets called in and they're just executing the play. Why? Because it's easier. They don't have to think of what play they're going to call next. They don't have to think about their situation. They don't have to think about getting the formations on and off the field in a limited play clock. So what happens is they call the play from the sidelines. The people who are supposed to be in that package are on the field. Everybody knows the play. We set off the play, and everybody adjusts based upon predetermined guidelines. Well, we can do the same thing. Opportunity comes your way every day. It's up to you to turn that opportunity into money. So our next call is scheduled for August 14th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Please send me any questions or comments along with any success stories that you'd like to share. I really appreciate those. I like engaging in those conversations. I like being able to see that these things are actually working for you. And again, if you have any suggestions on areas that you'd like to talk about, I'd appreciate you sending them in so that we can have the conversation and that we can help everybody else involved here. So again, you want to reach again, it's improvemytomorrow@yahoo.com. You can send me this stuff. Send me your questions and your phone calls. I appreciate your time. Please take this information and let's go out there and make some money. Have yourselves a great day.